This is Coffee with Temmi. Hello everyone, welcome back to Coffee with Temmi. Today is such a special day. First, let me say happy Father's Day to everyone, every dad out there, every uncle, everyone who is like a dad to someone, who has been a dad to someone. Happy Father's Day. We thank you for all that you're doing. We thank you for the men that have stood up to be men. So today I've got with me my very own pastor. Ooh, you have no idea how special this day is for me. So I'm going to do drum rolls. Pastor Tim. Today I'm talking to Pastor Tim Grage about bringing up children in 2022. Sometimes I actually confuse what century we are in, so I'm not going to say anything about that. So I'm just going to say, I want to know what it is like, Pastor Tim. Sorry, let me say hello to my...
Hello. My name is Tim Grage. It is great to be here on Coffee with Temmi.
Yo! Okay, you have no idea about my excitement on this. It took a while to hold him down. Huh?
No offense intended. It has just been a busy season.
Okay, we accept your apology. You're here now. Okay, so something came to me while I was thinking about this. And yeah, as usual, it's unscripted, so he didn't have any questions ready to read out, which he doesn't like.
Troubled. But let's see how this goes.
Yes. So I remember talking to you once when my child was still young, and you said something about having like 12 years experience parenting. And I thought, so he's got 2 kids. And I thought, what does it mean 12 years? His kids are not 12 yet. But now, having been at this parenting thing for a while, I realized that because you have 2 children who are totally different from each other, yes, it is, you add the years together and not say, oh, this was that. So what is it like? I want you to look at how you grew up, how you were parented, can I say that? Okay. And how different, because it is different, it is to parent children these days.
Well, my kids are, like you just mentioned, are different in personality. My older son, who is now at varsity, when he was much younger, it's quite interesting. When he was much younger, he was quite a handful. Very strong-willed, opinionated. I mean, in the complex we're living at, people even wrote us letters because early hours of the morning, my son will decide he wasn't ready to sleep and he was ready to cry. And so it did create. At some point, Temmi and I felt, that's my wife, both of us felt we were unqualified to raise him because nothing we did seemed to be working. So we decided that somebody must have been through this before, somebody must have experienced what we're experiencing before. Could we find them? And one of the easiest places to find them were books. In reading some of the books that we eventually got, I realized that what was being put on the table was quite different from the way I was raised. You see, the way we were raised, typical African home, your parents said you should do something. Now, you did it because they said so. They owed you no explanation, and they volunteered none whatsoever.
Yeah, we know about that.
And you did it. And look, I dare say, maybe because of the way the world was when we were growing up, that system worked. Because I think we turned out okay. Maybe psychologists might view me differently, but turned out okay. But our children are growing up in a very different environment. The environment they're growing up now, there's a lot more technology. So there's a lot more information. There's a lot more talk about freedom, personal expression, and the likes. Our kids now in a position where we are willing to accommodate a lot more questions from them. My parents, they didn't accommodate questions. Questions were treated as a challenge. I asked you to do something and you are questioning me.
Challenge to their authority.
Yeah, and that challenge was met with a firm hand. But yeah, some firmer than others.
Emphasis on the firm.
But we, on the other hand, look, the truth is we could have raised our children the same way. But I concluded that there must be a different way. And some of the materials for the first time that I was being exposed to showed me that there were other ways besides beating and threatening your child to get things done. I never knew there were other ways. So when my son will have a tantrum, and I'm talking about tantrums, he was 2-3 years old, he will have a tantrum where he would throw himself on the ground in a mall and say he's not going anywhere. because we did not buy him this, did not buy him that. And you know how parents can be. Other adults and parents walk past you and they'll look at you like, what kind of terrible parent is this? And you yourself feel so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, you want to give him the spanking of his life. But we live in a country where we would have been arrested. Thank God for that. Because we have to
thanks God for
that. We have to explore alternative measures. And again, I go back to the materials that we then got ourselves exposed to. In reading those materials, we realized that there were other strategies to implement. We saw that because they were children, it was a test of will. And you needed to show them that your will was stronger. And you did not even need to raise your voice. You did not need to get physically violent for them to do that. Using my son, for example, the idea, one of the things I learned from one of the many books was the fact that if we're in the mall and he threw his tantrum, like he would do, buy me this, no, I'm not leaving here, start screaming, throw himself on the ground. One of the remedies they volunteered was you let him cry it out, telling him that once he's done, let me put it in context. So I'll take my son, once he starts the tantrum, I'll take my son out of the mall and he will scream. I'm talking about screaming, kicking and screaming, not just, a loud voice, kicking and screaming. And I'll grab him and I'll take him out and we'll sit in the car and he's screaming and he's saying, I want to go back in. And with a very measured tone, I will say to him, we will go back in if you will stop crying and you will listen to me. No, no, no. And he raises his voice more and you must be willing not to give in. It was difficult at first. It didn't help that people walk past the car and they'll see a kid tugging at your shirt.
Maybe you're kidnapping
him. Yes, and some people will really stay and linger to really look at what's going, like you said, maybe you're kidnapping this child, but we noticed that, and it didn't even take that long, in less than a month of being consistent, and that was the key, being consistent. Mm-hmm. Every time you throw the tantrum, I did not miss a beat. I will respond the same way. And so he immediately connected the tantrum to being taken out of an environment he wanted to be in. And the tantrums reduced. Eventually the tantrums stopped. And that was such a blessing. We later realized that if we will learn how others have done it, you'll be shocked that as unique as you think your situation is, somebody's been there,
somewhere,
done that, got a t-shirt, wrote a book.
Okay.
About it. Mm-hmm. Now my daughter was different. My daughter, which is strange because my son started out being very loud, very opinionated, and now he is a 6'3", almost 6'4"
He's a gentle giant.
He is such a gentle giant. Now my daughter, on the other hand, comes out and unlike her brother, she was not as loud. It was easier to manage her. Maybe in hindsight, maybe because we had a lot more experience. So we weren't falling for a lot of the things that we fell for with my son. Mm-hmm. But we later discovered that as she grew older, unlike my son, her being opinionated
came later.
And now that we'll say my son is a gentle giant, my daughter, on the other hand, is formidable. My daughter is ready to confront anyone. If she believes that this is how it should be done, she has a better idea. She will not hold back to put it on the table. Now, again, my immediate response, because this was totally different for us, my immediate response was to default to the way I was raised and make statements like, because I said so, I will spank you, go to your room, and just render consequences for every infraction I thought she had committed. And then I became concerned because if there's anything I've learned, I think people are given their personalities to prepare them for the life that they're going to experience. I think if you see somebody that is strong-willed, they probably will face something in life. That's unless the strong-willed is as a result of trauma, but someone who it just seems to be their natural disposition. I feel that they have that disposition because it is to prepare them for what they will have to face, the kind of people, the kind of things they will have to face in life going forward. And so I have to be careful. I think all parents have to be careful not to change your child's personality because it is conflicting with the familiar.
You mean to be careful not to kill the spirit?
Yes, don't kill that spirit, but instead find ways to channel it. Because my daughter can remain, and this was what we had to learn to do. Could we teach her to not be rude, to not be aggressive, even though she should put her voice on the table? Because being a female, I had to accept that we still live in a very patriarchal world. A world that tends to silence the voice of the female. And I felt a very strong need not to be part of the voice that will silence her. A very strong need not to join because this was serious. Teachers from as early as at grade 1 were saying to us, your daughter back chats. We say do this, your daughter says why? Your daughter says, and I was willing to go say to them, was she rude? And when they say she was rude, I sit my daughter down and I engage. You do not do this. You can't use these words. But at the same time, I needed my daughter to still be able to say, this is not fair. Why is this being done?
But your children are so into fairness, Pastor Tim.
Yes, maybe they got that from me. I don't know. Yes, my kids can be they can really negotiate if they feel that somebody is being taken advantage of, the odds are not balanced. They are quite particular that life and everyone should be fair. So it's been a learning curve for us. We're still learning. Mm-hmm. If there's one thing my daughter in particular has taught me is how not to be angry, which is interesting because she can push your buttons. Yeah. And I've had to say to myself, yes, she is pushing the button, but only because I have a button to be pushed. If the button was not there, then there is nothing for her to push. And so instead of allowing her provoke me, because it's so easy to say she provoked me. No, you allowed yourself to be provoked. Accept responsibility also for
you're going to have to explain that because I'm one of those people. You know me.
Let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. A person has a right to say what they want to say. I'm not now referring to a child. I'm saying in general. Now, what they say can offend you. And it's okay to be offended if what was said was offensive. How you respond to the offense, though, is still in your purview. You are still responsible for your reaction. So, this is why if a person provokes you and you get violent with them, and you are able to prove that you are provoked, you are still arrested and charged for your act of violence. No court of law will say, yeah, but you were provoked. They will still say that you are responsible for how you reacted.
Yeah, but you know when you're talking to children, and I'm very old school, not even I guess, I was going to say I guess. I'm very old school. And it's not easy. Let me say it's difficult. It's not easy for me to take, okay, how do I put it now? To take a child talking back, because that's the way I see it. You're back chatting, which is like how I grew up. If your parents say something, it's gold. That's it. You know, you don't, even if you're in your head, you're having all these conversations. And I find myself at a conflict, not crossroads really, because on one hand, I'm quite happy that my child lives in an environment where they are allowed to have a voice, because there's still a lot of Africa that children don't have a voice. So I like the fact that she can be curious, she can ask questions.
I want to nurture that.
And I want that. But then there's that line. Maybe it's where I am at the time that she's asking the questions, I don't know. But there's line when she says something, and I'm like, I just told you. Because I said so.
There lies the issue. Each situation generally must be taken on its own merit. There are times that children are just being recalcitrant. They're just being stubborn. Mm-hmm. And there are times where they genuinely do not understand why you are taking this position, and they will be able, my daughter, for example, citing her thoughts on our being unfair, will very often say, but with this situation and with this person, You didn't do the same thing like you're doing with me. And I appreciate that. I think what is necessary is to be able to draw a line, to know when they are being rude and when they just need clarity. Sometimes they come off interwoven. For example, my child she doesn't like the choice that we're making, and so she begins to raise her voice as she's trying to explain how she feels our choice is unfair. And at that point, we make it clear that I'm willing to listen to you, but you can't talk like that.
Okay.
And you correct the misbehavior while you accommodate the question and the need that they are putting on the table. We must remember that the world has changed. I think it's the exposure, the information highway. So they're a lot more exposed to things than a lot sooner than we were exposed.
Yes,
a lot sooner.
Yeah.
So we're having conversations with them that our parents needed to have with us a lot later in life, if they ever did. We're having it with them a lot sooner. So that puts them and us in a situation where the rules that were okay for us, it's not a one-size-fits-all anymore.
No.
It really isn't. Again, this is why I really recommend getting the right material. Because again, whatever you think you are going through, somebody has been through it. When people sit, of course, because of the fact that one of my duties is that of a pastor, I have to counsel people. And the number of people that sit in front of me that think their problem is unique, that think that nobody...
We all think so.
Oh yes, I think it helps us it helps us justify our inability to solve it. So it's not because I lack the ability, it's because you see this problem. Nobody has been through it before.
Because it didn't happen to that person like it's happening to me.
Yes,
It's different.
And when you try to show them that it's not as unique, then they realize that, there actually is a solution that you have not contemplated, an option that you have not considered. I think in this life, we teach people how to treat us, including our kids. We fail to realize that. We actually, everything we tolerate from anyone instructs them that it is okay. Whatever you tolerate from your husband, tolerate from your friend, tolerate from your boss, tolerate from your pastor, tolerate from your subordinate, tolerate from your child. It's not just you tolerating it, it's you actually saying to them, this behavior is okay. So we have become part of our own problem. When our children there was a period where my daughter started slamming doors because she was upset. You upset her, she go to the room, she slammed the door. She did it the first time, I ignored it. Did the second time, I stopped it. I went into the room, she was sitting on the floor crying. I sat on the floor with her and I explained that when you slam the door like this, it's showing to me that you are being disrespectful. We have asked you to do something, and instead of doing it, you are being disrespectful. The next time you do this and that will be the consequence. But when you put a consequence on the table, you must follow through. You have to follow through. You can't be forgiving when you have put a consequence. Of course, the consequence should match the crime.
Yeah.
It should match the crime.
I think he's saying that because of me, because he knows a lot about my consequences.
You and your child.
I'm learning.
No, you are learning. The consequence should match the crime. And so you put a consequence on the table. And let the consequence have gradation. It really helps. It gives you options. So it gets worse as it goes along. So that way you just have a variety of options to work with. I see parents who always go for the I'll take away this. Always go for the I will spank you. And I'm saying, if you always go, they upset you raise your voice. At some point, your voice raised will mean nothing. It is the psychology of every human mind to accommodate something that is consistent. So if this parent keeps shouting at you, after a while, the shout will not mean as much as it did in the beginning. And there lies the challenge. Because then you will get louder and you will start asking yourself, what else can I add to this shout? And if you're not careful, you become unhinged. Parents who go straight to the spanking, after a while, you will notice that those two taps on the bum bum mean absolutely nothing because you have overused it. And then you go into a third, you go into a fourth. Before you know it, you are the parent that you swore you will never be, that is physically assaulting your child. Why? Because we need to see that there are options. There are so many things that we can do, and we grade it. I mean, I probably spanked my son in his entire lifetime once. Spanked my daughter, in spite of everything I've said, spanked my daughter in her entire lifetime. And right now my daughter is just about to enter into her teen years. With all that I've said, I've probably spanked her in her entire lifetime twice. And the reason is because you put the spanking as the end of the pendulum. Now people will say, you are still spanking your child? This is illegal. Raise your child how you want to raise yours and raise yours. The Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child.
Oh, my word.
One of the scriptures that I thought was very harsh was how the Bible says, iniquity lies in the heart of a child, but the rod shall drive it far from him.
And I think that's one thing that our parents held on to.
I
iniquity,
think my
whatever it must
memorized that scripture from her childhood because that was the default, when I was growing up. And because it worked for me, I ran the risk of thinking this was the only strategy, forgetting that the environment I was raised up in is not the same environment our kids are raised up in. This is why a number of kids today are contemplating suicide and they cite abuse of their parents. Now, when you break it down, particularly for us in Africa, when we break down the supposed abuse, if we're not careful as African parents raised in a home where the African culture was prevalent, we will look at what they are saying and think,
nonsense.
What rubbish is that? How is this abuse? This is common. But they are being raised in a totally different environment. The things, the sociological culture where we were raised up, already from childhood explained to us, you don't talk back. The entire village that you were raised in,
everybody had authority over you.
It was yes.
Everybody.
All of you were groomed in that light. It is very different from them.
Yeah.
Their education, their exposure to friends, everything tells them different. And so for them, when we try to impose the same one size fits all, it does feel like, it genuinely feels like abuse to them.
Yeah.
I think though that a lot of our kids today, and this is where parenting becomes extremely important. I feel a lot of our kids today are not as mentally strong as we are. Look, you could argue with me and maybe you might be able to prove your point and I will concede. But with what I do for a living and with my work with adults and kids, it seems as though they're not as mentally strong. Again, I blame a lot of the exposure that they have experienced, a lot of the material that is on television, a lot of the material that is on social media, where they see kids back-chatting parents, they see kids saying, I'm running away from home. You see, a lot of the materials that we're exposed to when we were growing up had none of that. No. There were no movies where a child says, I'm leaving home. Leaving home to where?
Yeah, my child actually packed her bags.
Yes.
And I said, where are you going? Said she was leaving. She was leaving home actually to go to pastor's house because that must be the perfect place. And I remember she packed properly. She packed toiletries in one bag, a nightwear and everything. But what shocked me afterwards, and I think I told you, was when I was going to be angry, and I remembered when I said, well, anyway, she came back in, and afterwards, and I just said, so why are you going? And the things, I'm not going to repeat and report myself on air. So the things she said to me, I was like, oh my word, this is the way I thought when my parents did the same thing. But I'm not sure. Oh yeah, my sister said I also packed. Said I was going to leave home at the same time. Okay, so it's easily repeating itself. But I understand what you're saying. But I understand what you're saying about the way the kids are and the exposure. But what do we do? How do we then go for parenting? This is modern parenting 101, because For example, I've learned to apologize to my daughter now through listening to Pastor. And
That's a big deal.
Because my parents never,
not
I
once.
kept waiting until another pastor friend said to me, "He's never," talking about my dad, said, "He's never going to apologize. For as long as you wait for it, you're going to be so disappointed." And that helped me, because he did die without apologizing. And not just not apologizing, not knowing he's done anything wrong, And the older I get, I see where, that's the way you're supposed to raise your child. That was it. If anybody was going to be accused of child abuse, I'll have to say I was abused, because I was beaten to an inch of my life, but then I was mischievous. I wasn't mean, just mischievous. But talking about children these days now, we know that watching TV, you see kids who slam the door. You see kids who backchat, and their parents don't say anything. And then they go to school, they find kids who are doing the same thing, whose parents don't say anything.
So it reinforces the behavior.
Exactly. And then you are home, you're trying as hard as you can to make sure that your child is going to be a responsible member of society when they get older. But it's difficult. Do we not take, for example, my child will say, "Don't spank me." No, spank me, but don't take away my phone. Don't take away my tablet, because that's like life, I got to have the phone.
That gives you power.
Yes.
That gives you power.
But you just said
and
now.
Maximize that power.
Yeah, but you said now we can't use just the one consequence.
So it has to have grades.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. We use grades, for example. And there's so many different measures. You can't go out with your friends. You can't have your tablet for the rest of the day. You can only have your tablet for an hour. We've used all of it. There were times where my son, for example, because of academic distraction, he could only play his PlayStation on weekends.
Oh dear.
And yes, and some of you will understand that was crisis moment. Crisis moment. So the whole week, no PlayStation. At first, my son thought he would die. He did not die.
He's still around.
He did not die. But guess what? Because we did that, and he understood, it was because of the report that he had put on the table. That term, he did a lot better.
Because he wanted this
PlayStation. He wanted a bit more leeway. And that's the point I'm making. We teach people, I will say that again, we teach people, including our kids, how to treat us. Give you a personal example. There was a lady, this is an adult example, but I'll relate it to a child as well. There was a lady whose ex will call her on the phone and cuss her out. And because they had to still do stuff together because of the child, she'll take the insults and then wade through it and eventually get to the matter to be discussed and then address it. And my wife was saying, what is she supposed to do? I said, this is what she should do. The next time the guy calls, she picks the call and he begins to call her names, blah, blah. She says immediately to him, you're using terrible words. I'm going to cut the call now. Offer no explanation and cut the call. The next time he calls, you pick it up again and listen cordially. If it starts again, you are using terrible words. I said, repeat the same action. Don't deviate over.
Don't get angry.
Don't deviate. Don't get angry, because the minute you get angry, then he knows it's working. Don't get angry. Don't raise your voice. Repeat the same action. In less than 1 week of cutting the call, and the guy will call back immediately. Did you just cut the call on me? You are shouting at me again. I'm going to cut the call. Cut the call immediately. Realize that the whole disposition of the guy changed. The minute she was unwilling and was consistent in not tolerating the behavior stopped. Either of two things will happen. The person will either walk away and not relate with you anymore. But if they have to relate with you, the behavior will have to change. And she helped that individual, and herself of course, find a better way to communicate. The same thing with our children. I think for us though, we allow our emotions to overwhelm us. We allow the pressure that we're already experiencing to inform our behavior towards the kids. Take, for example, you are already battling with the electricity bill. And then this child of yours
leaves all the lights on.
Leaves the sitting room with the TV on, and is now busy in the bedroom. But left that
I know
on.
That.
Decided they were going to make tea. Forgot that, and just and we allow that to now inform how we
snap,
and we take it out on them. The whole idea of being a parent, it's supposed to mature us. It's a gift from God, not just for us to grow them, but it's like building a house. It will grow you as well. It will build you. That whole process builds you as well, if you are willing to let it build you. I learned from my daughter that I don't have to shout when I don't agree, even though my default has always been raise your voice a bit louder, and with my baritone, it will get to her. But I saw that if I continued like that, my daughter will reach an age where she will have an issue, and I will not be the first person she wants to discuss that with, particularly if she was part of the problem in the first place. Because the thinking will be, your daddy will do this and that to me. I've sat my children down, both of them at different times, to explain. If you're ever in trouble, even if you are the orchestrator of the problem, my duty is to fight for you, is to protect you. So come to me. I will protect you. We will deal with your misbehavior
in the house, but
I will protect you. I think it is important for our children to know that. It is important because in this world, they will make mistakes.
Yeah.
And they will need adult help. Mm-hmm. If they can't find it in us, they will find it in whoever will give it to them. Of course, as my son has grown older, my relationship with him is changing. I no longer can say to him, you can't do this.
Okay, Pastor Tim, before you go there, because that was going to be my last question. You are very close to your father. You've got a good...
very close to my father.
Okay, see, I'm talking about what I know.
You've
got a good relationship with your father.
I do.
Okay. How is your Let's look at your relationship with your father, then your relationship with your son.
My relationship with my father did not start out close. My father worked outside of the city we were in. So we lived in one city and he was always deployed elsewhere. He kept on being moved all over the place. But my mother did something interesting. I still look back and I don't understand how she did it. She kept the consciousness of my father in the house.
Okay.
She made us write letters to him, and my father would reply. His letters were shorter than ours, but my father replied every single letter we wrote to him. My mother, if we had any successes, my mother was unflinching and unfailing in saying to us, your father will be so excited when he hears this, when he sees this. Of course, there was also when we did something wrong.
I tell your father.
I am going to tell your father, just expect that you are in trouble. So for some, this and many more that I'm not even certain of, she was able to keep the consciousness of my father in the house. But sadly, there was more information about when we did something wrong, I am going to tell your father, than there was the other things I've just mentioned. Okay. So whenever my father will come home, I wasn't the only one. Whenever he will come home, if we're all in the living room, we will exit the living room. Because there was always this thought, he was now associated with
punishment.
Of course, that was not my mother's intention, but that was the consequence of that whole scenario. But as we grew older, I realized that this man had labored and sacrificed for us to have the kind of life that we had. Every time, and this was me doing an introspection. It was probably just before I got into varsity. It was me doing my own personal introspection, where I had to say to myself, every time I've had to talk to my father, what has been his disposition? What has been his response? And I couldn't deny that he had always been gentle. he had always been even more understanding than my mother, and more patient than my mother. You know, I take nothing away from my mother, because my father didn't have to deal with us every day like my mother did. So to be fair, my mother faced a lot more of our pressures than he did. But he was a lot more gentle. And it became obvious that it is easier to tell him than it is to tell her. And so as I grew older, maybe because I'm also a guy, it just became easier to talk to him about things that I was beginning to face, decisions that I had to make. It helped also that my father has been quite successful in his career path, made many mistakes as a husband, but kept his family nonetheless, and provided more than enough for his kids. So as a father, he was there. Every time my father will come home, he was present. So every time for the few weeks he will be home, we will go out every week. He will buy us stuff. We felt Daddy was home.
Okay.
You know, and so that went a very long way for me. The reason why, for example, with my wife, we have only 2 kids, was exactly because of that. Yes, because I had to make the decision with my lifestyle, the kind of work that I do. I felt I will be too busy. If I had too many kids, I will not be able to attend. I might struggle to attend every recital, every dance practice, every award night. And so...
And his kids get awards.
Yes, God has been good.
Every award.
God has been good to us. And I wanted to make sure that we were free enough to be able to attend every event. And that's why we ended up with 2 kids. So we've been very deliberate. Well, we could always do better, but we've tried to be very deliberate, from the number of children we've had to the things we believe that they should learn, the kind of schools we believe that they should go, the kind of friends that we've prayed into their lives, and we have
I like that.
prayed into their lives, and deliberately placed them in the schools that we thought will expose them to those kind of friends, so that they could, some of the vital information we thought they should have could be reinforced in them and with them. So we have been, yes, quite intentional to teach them certain values that we have thought they needed to accommodate. We really have been.
Okay. Now, with your son, you need to see them together. And you know I love that boy. Hey, that young man. Can't call him a boy anymore.
Not a boy anymore.
That young man. So this gentle giant, because he is a gentle giant, your relationship with him is close. Anyone who sees the 2 of you can tell your relationship. How did you manage to? I'm purposely focusing on him because it's Father's Day. So father to son, how did you do that? Because I find a lot of it's the same thing. It's that battle. Like girls and their moms, we get to that age where we fight.
There seems to be a friction,
but I'm not seeing that. As he gets older, it's like you guys are closer, you know? And how did you do that?
Like I just mentioned with my father, later I began to realize that he was present, he was gentle, and so it wasn't his fault that we had the impression, that I had the impression of him. So it helped me make the decision that I will be present with my kids. That's why I've just mentioned that we decided to just have 2 kids so that we could be present with them and in every stage of their lives. One thing that I know that I was very intentional in doing is spending time when he was much younger with him. So he had his own room. I will actually go and sit on his bed and we will talk. Of course, the conversations range from important to absolute nonsense, right? But I would deliberately go to his room and sit there and have a conversation with him. It became normal for him to be able to talk to me because that's what he has always known. This is so important because a time will come where your voice might not be the loudest anymore in his ears. A woman will show up somewhere a career that he's so passionate about will show up somewhere, and your voice might not be as loud. So even if your voice is no longer the loudest, but over time you have trained him to see that your voice is always available for him, he will still default to it, and that's what has helped. That whole scenario of right from his childhood being present with him, and he became used to seeing us, has really gone a very, very long way. So what we are seeing today was deliberately engineered in the hope that it will arrive here. So now my son is telling us that he's going to, before my son would need permission. Now he doesn't need permission, he's in pastor. But my son still feels a need to say to us, so I'll be going to a certain party with so and so. He feels a need to share it. And I remember the first few times he had done it, my immediate response was, no, don't go. You won't go until his mother had to say to me, you can't tell him that. He doesn't have to tell you he's going there. You will have no idea
whether he's been there or not.
And I had to calm down and say, yeah, he's an adult now. He's arrived there. You need to transition in your relationship with him. But he's telling us those things. I mean, my son tasted alcohol for the first time, and he shared it with us.
And it's not a lie.
And he shared it with us. He actually called and said, so I went with this person and that person, and they bought, and I wanted to know what it tastes like.
He didn't like it.
No, he didn't like it. I am grateful he didn't.
We're so happy.
But so far he didn't like it. But he didn't have to tell us.
No, he didn't.
But because we had built that regular conversations, it's normal for him to say, oh, this happened. Oh, that happened. What are your thoughts? And I think, particularly for those who have young kids, this is your opportunity. It's not about giving them all the time. Nobody needs all your time. Nobody does. It is about being deliberate to be consistent in giving them time. Whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, giving them time. The consistency will accumulate to become something major. It will train them to accept that this is common for us.
Yeah.
This is common to us. And that's what we want to do. The brain with consistent exposure assumes that this is normal, and with that assumption, creates expectation for it.
Pastor Tim, we're going to have a part 2 of this, because I'm remembering things that I thought, now why are they doing that? I know how you go out with your kids, and I know you have times when you go out with just the boy, and when you go out with just the girl. So you have that time, So it's not just, and I'm hearing all of this now, though I know you guys do talk a lot at the house, but that you actually make the time. Because I'm always like, I need some peace and quiet, so I need to start talking to my child now. Oh dear, okay, so we're going to have conversations, and yeah, I think the next time I'm going to have a long list of stuff that I want. Well, not a long list, but things that have come up from what you've just said now, that I think it would be Parenting 101 for quite a number of people, even those who think their kids are old, but it's not too late to.
No, it's
never too late. It's never too late to.
It's never too late.
Yeah,
we made a list
restore.
of 7 things that we thought our children must be taught.
Okay.
And we did that from when my son was a toddler. 7 things that we thought 7 values we thought every family should teach their child.
What if these values are not that family's values?
Well, our values are scriptural values.
Okay.
So, of course, I am biased to what the Bible says. Okay. I really am. So the 7 values were coined from biblical thoughts. And we became deliberate to teach them that. People say things like, my son is quick to say I'm sorry, is quick to say thank you, is quick to say, he will try and open a door for a lady. None of this happened simply because he's a good boy. What does that mean? There's nobody that is good. Good and evil. Except, of course, when it just seems like some people, let me not go there. But good and evil is taught. Yeah. Particularly when you notice it in a little child, it's taught. It's what they see and it's what they've learned. It's taught. My son learned a lot of these things because we were deliberate. We sat to say, this is what you do. and this is why you do it. We did not hope that they will pick it up along the way. We sat to explain. Jason knows that the reason we open doors for ladies, you've seen me do it for your sister, I do it for your mother, and we've explained.
He's been married almost 20 years. He still open doors for her.
Oh, yes.
He will carry bags. He will, all those things that were like in the olden days. It's not just saying, we've seen it.
And we were deliberate. I even got my son books to read concerning how to be a gentleman. We bought him the books. We made sure he read it. How did we make sure? There were consequences, not punishments. There were actually rewards for reading the book. If he was to read a book within a particular time frame, he would get a game, for example, that he always wanted. You have no idea how much that was such an encouragement. With my daughter, money is the encouragement. You finish this number of books within this period of time, you will get an increase in your allowance. For my daughter, that is it. And she will read it like she's hungry. And after they will read the materials, we will go over it. What did you learn? What did it say? Can we discuss it? Is it something you are willing to implement? If not, why? And it's amazing how a lot of these has created what we are seeing today. Again, everybody's still a work in
progress, yeah.
And we trust God that a lot of the virtues and values we've instilled, life will not workshop it out of them.
Amen. Amen.
Again, that's where the prayer comes in, engaging God in prayer to ensure that, how does the Bible say that? Train up a child in the way that he will go, and when he's old, may we train and not just hope. The Bible says we must train the child. We can't assume they will know it. We can't assume that they will also learn it just by watching us. That should help. That is important. But we must also be deliberate to train the child in the way we want it to go.
Woo, Pastor Tim, I'm not going to tell you what the time is, but I've run over my time. Whatever time I told you, forget it. It's gone.
Oh, my goodness.
So, Pastor Tim is very passionate about reading, as you can guess. I'm going to take names of books. I don't know if he's got them right off his head now. So I'm going to take the names of the books that will help parents and your children as well. The books, and he's giving me some that I have not read 1/3. Yeah, I'm not looking at him now because I know I've not done what I'm supposed to do. But yes, so I will get some names from there. And it also helps that mom and dad are on the same page in what they want for their kids. Thank you so much, Pastor Tim. And you just have to come and do Parenting 101.
It's been a joy. I look forward to having another session.
Woo! Thank you so much. It's been Coffee with Temmi. Thank you, everyone, for listening. See you next week. Bye for now.